Okay, so you leave the temple. What do you say to Joe?
I'm going to be honest, mostly I laughed. I'm like, that was weird. My dad in that outfit was hilarious. It was fine. I felt fine. And I had kind of reconciled in my mind that I would move forward to do this for Joe.
Okay.
So it was fine.
Yeah, and lots of people do that. They're just like, oh, I don't know if I totally believe it all, but I love my spouse and I want to have a family, so they go with it.
Yep.
So what happened?
So then we got married and things got real. And again, I'm a very authentic person. And in those first few months of my marriage, I felt that I had really made the wrong decision.
Why?
1, in marrying so young, but 2, in marrying in the temple.
Is that because marriage was harder than you thought? Did you not feel prepared for marriage?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, but more than that, it was the faith crisis. What was going through my mind was that I had married someone who was truly believing, clear on how they felt, and clear on the direction they wanted to head in life. And I felt very unclear. And so I felt pressure to figure it out, but also I felt a lot of fear and a lot of guilt that I was going to pull a 180 on Joe. Even though he had known that I had doubts, he married me. I married him in the temple. So I think he had this expectation that I would be the Mormon wife that I said I was going to be. And then in those first few months, I was wearing garments. We're going to church. We're doing temple work. And I'm like, this does not feel authentic for me. But here I have committed my life to this man. And I've committed a life with this man to my God. So how can I reconcile feeling the pressure to keep those commitments, but also, wrestling with these doubts? Like, how can I live authentically when I've already promised? Like, I thought, you made your mind up when you got married in the temple. What are you doing? But so that's, things took a turn again around that time in my life. I stopped wearing my garments within the first 6 months of my marriage. Joe and I had a lot of really heavy marital issues in the first year.
Like, how was that? Like, talk about how being in a mixed faith marriage at BYU as a newlywed, like even that conversation about I'm not wearing my garments, what was that like?
I remember the day that I stopped wearing my garments. I came out in an outfit, and obviously Joe could tell I wasn't wearing my garments, and he started crying. And he just was sad. He's like, it breaks my heart that you don't want to wear your garments. And for me, I felt so much guilt. I didn't blame him at all for feeling that way. And so then I felt even worse. I'm like, well, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't, because if I wear my garments, I feel like I'm a liar. But if I don't, I'm breaking my husband's heart, and that makes me feel terrible. So
why did you take them off? So why didn't you just keep wearing them?
Because I just couldn't lie. I just felt... It felt too inauthentic. Mm. So, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to wear them. So I just, but being in a mixed faith marriage was hell. It was not good. I wouldn't recommend. I mean, there are some couples that I've seen that can do it and they're amazing, and it totally doesn't work for me. It was really, really difficult.
What were some of the other things that first year that were super hard, or areas of conflict, or stories with you and Joe?
Yeah, well, I mean, we ended up separating in our first year and lived apart for a couple of months.
What led to that? How did that happen?
My faith crisis.
So how did that happen? What's that conversation like? How does it lead to that?
Well, so I stopped wearing my garments, and then I stopped wanting to go to church. And then I felt my side, to be fair to myself here, I felt very unsupported in that time.
By him?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
How was he looking at you? What judgments was he making of you? Or
he was frustrated. And I get that. But for me, I felt that I needed compassion and time and a little bit of grace. And he was putting pressure, and there was anger and resentment on his end. So I ended up just leaving one day. I was like, I need to spend a weekend away.
Because you're fighting? Because you're yelling?
We got in a
yelling
fight.
At each other? Like,
well, not yelling. We weren't like that. It was more just, I don't know. We were disconnected. We were arguing. We weren't spending time together. And so we ended up getting in an argument one day, and I thought that I would leave just for the night and go spend the night with my sister. And I ended up being gone for 2 months. I just didn't want to go back. I felt like I had made, again, just this wrong decision. It was too quick, and there was pressure, and I did it for the I got married for the wrong reasons. Wasn't prepared to get married, and now everything was coming to a head because now I am married and reality sets in. And so we ended up separating, and then when we got back together, we ended up working with a bishop and a therapist.
What was that separation like?
It was the first time I ever drank alcohol was when we separated. I was kind of done with, like, I felt that I was done with the church.
Had you had a full-on, did you stop believing by then?
Yeah.
By the separation? Mm-hmm. Okay, so talk about that. So how did you go from like, oh, I don't feel honest in the temple to like, I don't believe anymore? Was it all during that first year? It
was all in that first year, yeah. But this was compounded from, it was about, I'd say, a period of a year and a half of a lot of research and a lot of reflection.
Were you reading books? Were you reading websites? Mm-hmm. Were you listening to podcasts? What were your main resources for study? The main ones that influenced you the most?
Well, my dad gave me a lot.
Did you read Rough Stone Rolling?
Yeah.
You read Rough Stone Rolling? Mm-hmm. What else? Do you remember books you read?
This was a long time ago. I'm trying to remember. Mormon Stories.
So my podcast?
Yes.
How'd you hear about that?
I heard about you through a neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah, to be honest, I can't even recall all of the sources at this point. This was so long ago, but yeah, just a lot of books, internet, your podcast, conversations. I had conversations with.
Did you find friends? Did you find friends that knew about all this stuff that you could talk to?
No, not friends. People older than me.
And old bishops.
Uh-huh.
What were those conversations like?
I had a really, really awesome bishop who told me that he understood my questions and my doubts, and he encouraged me to simply take a sabbatical from the church.
Okay.
He said, if you need to take some time away and resolve those issues or study them, or, but he just encouraged me, don't completely leave. Hang in there, but do what you need. And that was very comforting. And my dad had a very similar response to my questioning as well. He answered me directly when I brought him my list of questions. He and I had a lot of conversation about that. But his was also in a way I wouldn't say faith promoting, but in a sense he wanted me to stay in the church as much as I could, but acknowledged that my questions and doubts were valid. So I appreciated that.
And again, you mentioned polygamy. What were, let's just say, the top 5 or 7 issues that really got you?
Book of Mormon.
What about it?
Just its authenticity and
the historicity stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then polygamy, and I mean a little bit issues like blacks in the priesthood, but more than anything, I'm going to say polygamy was my biggest
What
issue.
did you hate about polygamy?
How it was taught to me. I think I don't know long term that I could have accepted the truth about polygamy in the long run. But at that time in my life, I felt if this had just been taught to me truthfully from the start, I could have been a little bit more okay with that.
What had you been taught?
Well, I had really been taught that Joseph Smith had one wife that he loved, and that was Emma. And the other wives were spiritual wives, and that this was God's plan, and that it was a holy practice.
And that's not.
And I felt that
What was the reality that you learned that was in contrast to what you feel like you were taught?
The reality of polygamy was that there were families who were forced to practice polygamy who didn't want to practice it, that there were families broken up because of polygamy, and that Joseph Smith, I personally feel, didn't practice polygamy because I think there were ulterior motives in his practice for polygamy, or his practice of polygamy.
Meaning sex?
Whether that was sexually or power or ego-driven.
So it wasn't of God?
Yes.
Okay. So that was the big one. What about Book of Abraham? What about LGBT stuff? Women? What about feminism, women stuff? Any of that?
It was interesting. The LGBTQ and feminism, those didn't really start to play a big factor in my opinions until more recent years.
Okay.
But initially, I mean, obviously, I had concern there, but those weren't major for me. But definitely, Book of Mormon. I mean, having been taught that was a literal work and that the stories of the Book of Mormon actually happened, and then coming to find, all the contradictions within the Book of Mormon and just the lack of evidence to prove that any of that really happened was a huge issue for me.
Okay. So you go on sabbatical, you're separated, you try alcohol. Mm-hmm. What was that about? Like, why even try it?
Just fun. I'm like, I'll just do it. I was just with my girlfriends and it was like, I had never done anything wrong ever. I was such a rule follower. And so just to go out and have a good time, and it was fine. It was just that I mentioned that because that's what stands out to me most about when we were apart. I'm like, oh, well, that was the very first drink that I ever had was when we were apart. It nothing major, just for fun.
Okay.
So.
And so did you try, I imagine would you have been tempted to date while you were separated?
Kind of, but not really. We were, Joe and I were separated, but we would talk. I mean, we were trying to figure things out, so I wasn't there yet to where I was trying to date other people. Okay,
so you got back together. How did that happen?
One very bad night. I had a really bad night. I ended up calling him, and he came over, and we just had this really honest conversation, and we're like, we love each other. We want to give this another chance. We're unhappy being apart. And you know what? He came, I felt like he met me a little bit in the middle at that point. He's like, I understand that you're having doubts, but let's work through this. And more than anything, I think we were both very committed to the idea of marriage because we had been taught to be committed to that. And so the idea of divorce was not something that I think either of us wanted to consider.
And so was he like saying, I accept you for who you are, like we can do this?
No, he was saying, I accept that you're having doubts. Let's work through them. Let's meet with the bishop, which we did.
Okay, so how was that?
That was so rough.
Did the bishop fix it all?
No, he made it worse.
Okay, how?
We met with a bishop in I won't be I won't be too clear here, but we met with a bishop who the whole situation was uncomfortable. Obviously, I had to go through the repentance process. I had partied, so I had to sit, down there with my husband, who was like this, again, Mormon golden boy, and I was kind of painted as this, all of a sudden, this just partier, which wasn't even true, but in that world it was. And so, there was so much. The repentance process for me at that time sucked. But I was like, I'll do it for Joe. I love him. And again, I didn't really believe, but I just went with it because I wanted to save my marriage and stay with Joe.
So did they like discipline you? Did you have to probation?
I think, I was definitely, I can't even remember.
Okay.
Maybe there's trauma associated here, so I blocked some of this from my memory. But
was it a painful process?
I went through a disciplinary council.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
For Word of Wisdom?
Yeah.
I've never heard. Well, I guess I have heard of that.
I worked with a bishop from a very small town.
Okay.
It was a very,
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So were you disfellowshipped?
No.
So just probation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So how did you guys emerge?
What was interesting about it was Joe and I had always been very open to whenever we might have a baby. So I never used birth control. We're just kind of like, okay, when it happens, it happens. And what ended up happening was once we got back together, things were really, really good for a certain amount of time. And then I got pregnant. And so it was like, that was the happy period of our marriage, was when we found out that I was pregnant. And it was like, we no longer cared about, our focus changed. it changed from what we wanted personally to what we wanted to give our baby. And this is a very important part of the story because what ended up happening was I miscarried at 16 weeks. I thought I was going in to find out.
4 months.
Yes. I thought I was going in to find out the gender. And I went in to find out that the baby had died. And
does that qualify stillborn or not? Or
no, but I had a D&C. Okay. So I was, far enough along. So that acted as the catalyst for what I feel was the true self-discovery. So
what happened? I'm so sorry, by the way.
Yeah, it's okay because, like I said, I think it was a good thing. So what happened was I miscarried. And then I remember within about a month after that miscarriage, I was on a run one day and I thought, I almost had a baby with this person. I need to be really, really clear about if I'm going to stay in this marriage or not, and if I believe this church or not. And so, like I said, acted as the catalyst for me getting really honest about how I felt. And I spent the next 6 months after that just allowing myself to be completely honest. And then it was about 6 months after that I filed for divorce.
And what was that conversation like with Joe? What was that process like?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard because we had this, we'd had this happy little period where we finally got things together as a couple, and we had this hope of a family, and things were pretty good. And then I just told, my first divorce was very loving and amicable. I just had the honest conversation with Joe. This is where I'm at with the church. I don't believe in it, and I don't anticipate ever coming back to full activity and my membership in the church. And I know that you do, and you deserve to have a woman who supports you in that and who aligns with you in that way. And I deserve to have a partner who aligns more on my worldviews as well. Because long term, we're both great people who deserve to have what we want in life and to be fulfilled and happy. And so at first he had a really hard time with it. He didn't want the divorce. I didn't want the divorce, but Joe was very resistant to it. Like, let's work it out. We can work through this. And then after things calmed down a few weeks later, he said that he agreed and that it was probably best for both of us. And so we went through, our divorce was very easy, very simple. We remained friends after.
Why not just be in a mixed faith marriage and just you accept him as a believer and he'll be faithful, and this is a mindset. I'm not saying it's true, but a mindset might be he'll be honest, he'll be faithful, he'll be committed father and husband, he'll be moral, and the church will be, it'll be what's meaningful to him. And I won't be, but I'll live a moral, healthy, happy life. And, when he's at church, I'll exercise or I'll go with him just to support him. But why not more flexibility since you both respected each other a lot and you probably shared a lot of values, even if you weren't believing he was, you probably still shared a lot of those same values. Did you even consider that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did he? I considered that, and as did he. And he and I actually during all of these conversations had said, if we were to never have children, we probably could have stayed together. Because, I think we could have made it work and found a way to respect each other. But when it came to how we would raise our children, neither of us were willing to compromise. And I knew that would be a battle, a lifelong battle, and really confusing for the kids.
Okay. So it was a mutual decision ultimately. Yeah. And you both felt good about it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so by this time, you're what age?
22.
Okay, so you were pointing towards the Mormon dream.
Yeah.
And now by 22, you will have lost a sibling, lost your faith, had a miscarriage, gotten divorced.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What was that like?
It was very lonely and isolating. I had pretty much all of my friends that I had when I was married to Joe didn't really talk to me anymore, didn't reach out to me. I felt like I had lost everything. I'd lost relationship with some of my closer family members who didn't understand my choices. Nobody could make sense of me leaving Joe because he was so amazing. Everyone thought I was crazy. And so my family was like, just thought I was going crazy. And so it was very lonely. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have anyone to turn to?
I moved in with my brother's ex-wife, who she and I have always been really, really close. And she was awesome. I moved in and lived with her, and that was great. I had her. But I had to really completely recreate my social circle.
So what did that do to your mental health and your worldview? Like, where were you? Like, the church provides so much: identity, morality, spirituality, community, friends. You know, it resolves the questions about death and the afterlife, why you're here, your meaning, your purpose. Like, how did you cope with that? Like, honestly, I'll just say this. Most people would not do what you did. They would just say, well, I have to believe. So they like pack down the disbelief. Mm-hmm. They re-engage as a believer. They maybe even commit to the church even more, but just staring the option of divorce, leaving the church, all the social implications. Most people just, they'll put the genie back in the bottle before they'll let it out.
Well, I got to a point where I said, I can handle, again, I feel like I relate to Lisa. And I thought, I can handle this the way Lisa did, or I can handle this the big girl way.
Meaning you started to feel
not that I thought about
trapped?
But what I mean is that I think she felt what I was feeling. Like when she chose that, she was probably in a similar headspace of, I have to live this life. Like, how can I live anything other than this?
So you did feel that sort of pressure.
I felt that pressure.
In.
I wasn't suicidal, but I felt that pressure.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You felt that, like, I'm going to disappoint everyone.
Oh, yeah. I knew what was going to happen.
And how do you leave the church in Utah when everyone's Orthodox? And how do you be a divorced person in Utah?
Oh, yeah.
The stain and like...
Exactly. I saw it as I was losing my marriage. I was losing my community. I was losing my friends. I was losing my reputation. I was losing my hopes and dreams of what I thought my life was going to be. I was losing my God. I was losing everything. But I thought, I won't put my family through what Lisa did. I just won't go there again. So
because you felt like that if you had stayed on that path.
Oh, I would have been miserable. And so, I felt like those were my two options. Like either, I guess I had three. Live a miserable life that wasn't true and honest. Do what Lisa did. Or like I said, kind of man up and just face it.
Woman up.
Woman up. So that's what I did. I just was like, I'm not, and I don't know if there was something in me that knew some intuitive part of me that, I got in tune with my inner strength and I listened to it and I let her guide me through that time. And I made the right decision 100% in all things with the church and with Joe. Two best decisions that I've ever made as an adult.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. But what's it like to leave the church, get divorced, and be in Utah with everyone around you being Orthodox? Talk about like swim in that for a little bit. Like, what's that like?
Yeah, it was very difficult. Again, especially because I had identified so strongly with the Mormon church that's how the community knew me. I mean, there were rumors, there was gossip. I mean, people were mean to me. It was a lot of just like
what types petty. Of gossip? What type of meanness?
Well, it was easy to, okay, so I got divorced at the same time that I left the church. So it was really easy to say, well, Liz got divorced because she wanted to party or she didn't want to be married or there were rumors about my morality. There were rumors about how I was as a spouse. I mean, it was just
that you're like a drunkard or promiscuous, like what, those types of rumors?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was devastating because some of those rumors came from people that were at one point really, really close to me, and they just weren't true.
And so if somebody says you left the church to party or you left the church to sleep around, what would you say?
Well, I would just explain to them what I gave up when I left the church. I gave up my entire world, and I gave up my world. So if you think I gave up my world for a glass of alcohol, you're very small-minded.
So that wasn't in your motivation. You weren't like,
not at all.
I want to go party. I want to go have fun.
Not at all. I appreciated the Mormon lifestyle. I'm a very healthy, active person. So
you're an athlete.
Yeah. So I had no problem. I mean, I never Drinking was like neither here nor there for me. And I appreciated being married and having that companionship. And I wanted to be a mom. And the Mormon dream was so pretty to me. So this had nothing to do with lifestyle at all.
And you weren't wanting to sow your wild oats with guys?
No.
Who would, right?
Yeah. No,
guys sometimes do, and maybe sometimes women do, but that wasn't you.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I started living a different lifestyle where I was, drinking, going out with friends, not wearing garments, having sex before marriage, whatever, simply as a result of like
living in the real world.
That was never the motivation. That was just the product.
Right.
Of what.
But people can easily conflate that if you end up drinking or going to a party or having a boyfriend that you end up sleeping with, that's why you did it. But it was just being an adult in America.
Normal.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So lots of gossip, lots of rumors. You lost a lot of friends. People were mean. How do you make sense of that? Like, because on the one hand, we were all there. We probably were all judgmental at one point or another.
It makes me sad because especially with some of my female friendships, I think that I had friends that could have been lifelong friends for me. And I think both of us would have, we would have had a lot of value out of these friendships. And I think it's really sad that my closest girlfriends let our difference in faith and lifestyle end our friendship. It's not like I expected them to hang out with me anymore or come out to the bars with me or whatever, but they didn't even talk to me anymore. And they went one further as to try to, I think they were trying to make sense of my actions themselves. And so the gossips and the rumors are a result of them trying to explain how I could be leaving the church.
It's scary to have a loved one who you respect leave the church because it immediately, if you're paying attention, is going to make you think about, well, do I believe in the church and could I leave the church? So it's almost psychologically a very natural reaction to have to demonize the person who's left because then you can say, well, they're a demon, so they left.
Yes.
And then you don't ever have to question your own beliefs.
Yes, I think there was a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
Going on.
So, wow, you lost your close friends. That's super. I mean, that's another thing. That's like another blow. Like, this isn't getting any better.
I know.
The story isn't getting better.
My story is tragic right now. It gets better.
Okay. All right.
No, the good news was that for the first time in my life.
Yeah, the good news. I want to hear the good news.
Yeah, the good news in all of this is that I was free to choose for me authentically, honestly, and there's so much power in that and freedom in that. And again, I'm so grateful that I had these experiences at such a young age. Like a lot of what I've been through in the last 10 years, some people don't experience in a lifetime, but I got to experience it at a young age. And
but wait, it's so much hard stuff.
Yeah, but again, I'm just appreciative that I faced these challenges early on. Because now I'm kind of set up for the rest of my life. One, having a lot of wisdom, I feel, that people don't gain maybe until later years. But also living authentically from the time I'm 22. Like, that might sound like a no-brainer to some people. But for people who leave the Mormon church, they feel, oh, I wasted 45 years living inauthentically. And for me, I got to do it at 22 and it was hard as hell, but now I have the rest of my life to live the way that feels right.
Sean, we've got a lot of wonderful listeners tuning in. Sean Escobar, who we interviewed just recently, he wrote, "Sounds like you were true to yourself. I was not for 20 adult years. Wish I could get that time back. Lived a lie. Didn't realize I was choosing it."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks, Sean.
I feel grateful for.
So what's the value? Put some meat on the bones of this idea of authenticity because you're losing your community, you're losing your friends, you're losing your identity, your sense of spirituality. There's all that pain. And then like, what? You get to drink beer now? Like, I know you didn't do it for that reason, but like,
right.
What is authenticity? Because, okay, right. You can have premarital sex or you can drink beer. Put meat on that bones of how authenticity actually matters versus the Mormon dream, which even if it's not true, plenty of people follow the Mormon dream and don't believe it. Mm-hmm. But the lifestyle they want or they like, so it's worth it. What made your authenticity worth it to you beyond beer and sleeping around?
So this might sound contradictory because that seems like a lot of chaos, right? You know, everything that was going on in my world seemed chaotic, and it was in certain ways. But what was really going on was peace. So for me, authenticity, the value that comes from being authentic is the peace that I felt internally. I feel good. I feel honest. I feel happy. I feel less pressured. I feel like I can be, and I feel like I'm able to give my highest contribution back to the world when I'm operating from that space. And being authentic is essential for me to operate from that space.
Because if you're not authentic, you feel what? Guilt,
shame, pressure, fear, anxiety.
And what does that do to your mental and physical health?
It limits you.
Yeah.
And limits how you can give to other people.
That's beautiful. Okay. What about what people are going to say, well, wait, you know, if you don't have the church, if you don't have the morality, why would you ever be faithful to a boyfriend or spouse? Why would you ever not just lie? Why wouldn't you just become a meth addict and just do drugs all the time? Like, how did you start piecing together your own morality that wouldn't cause you to go off the rails? Or did you go off the rails? Or have you gone off the rails?
You know, this is important.
Because I'm sure you had to start dating, right?
Yeah. This is important because I hope other people can relate to this. Redefining morals was hard for me. Again, because now I have opened Pandora's box. I have access to whatever I want. There are no limits. So again, how do I define that for myself? And why do I define it the way that I choose to? That was hard. So I think there's a pendulum swing. So I think a lot of young millennial Mormons, when they leave the church, they came from one extreme and I see them swing to the other. And you know what? I think there's a space for that. I had that time. I definitely partied hard after I left the church and had to.
Why'd you party hard? I have this weird, bizarre fascination with all that stuff because I still have never tried beer. Like Margie's the only person, you know, so like, why would you go there? Because I could. There's part of me that wants to try that someday, but I haven't, you know what I mean?
Because I could, it was fun. I mean, people drink because it's fun. People have sex because it feels good. People do these things because there's some joy and excitement that comes out of it. So again,
or even like marijuana or whatever. I mean, you don't have to say.
No, I don't. No,
okay.
No, nothing like that. But as far as like, if we want to get, you know, real, partying and sex, it was just, I don't know. It was just experience. And it wasn't like I did anything so crazy or I was out every weekend or out with 100 men or anything like that. But I definitely had a moment where I felt like I was living, and honestly, to be fair, I felt like I was living my true 20s. Like what any 22-year-old girl was doing.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, but again, so coming back to that contrast of coming from a conservative extreme to the opposite, I think that you meet in the middle, you know, as you have experiences, because there's bad on that other side as well. So, you know, the partying, the men, whatever it is, there's a negative side too. And you learn from that.
What are the negative things about that type of party?
Well, just drama that comes. I mean, I value relationships. I want to be in relationship with one person. I don't want to be with a bunch of people. Yeah.
You're kind of are you saying you're kind of a monogamist at heart, or like a one person?
Yeah, for
person?
Sure. Definitely. Okay. So,
And did you see people harm themselves with the substances, like take it too far?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just a lot of like nonsense, you know, it's like you'd go out go out to a bar, go out to a party, and people are just being shitheads, and it's drama and it's not fulfilling. And it's like,
it's empty
in some ways for sure. And ultimately I want to be a wife and have a family. I want to be a mother. And so long term, I mean, in the short term, sure, like let's have a good time. Who cares? But long term, that's not what I'm looking for. So I think I've leveled out to a point where I can experience, you know, I still drink and I still go out with my friends and I still party to a certain extent, but ultimately I know where I want to go. So I've redefined that moral code for myself, which I think many kids my age, that's where we get. That's what I'm trying to say. We come from here, from one extreme, go to the other, then we balance out. Because we realize that it's not all roses on the other side either, you know, and that your choices have consequences. And I think if you get clear about your values, and if you're someone who values marriage and family, you're not going to find that, you know, in that scene.
And I just have to say, anyone who's paying attention to Utah knows that you can be Orthodox Mormon and be addicted to prescription meds, addicted to alcohol, have, you know, how many billions of Mormons in Utah have sexual addictions, whether it's, you know, they call porn and masturbation that, but then also just acting out sexually, but you're married, but you're active in the church and you're just living this double life. And that goes back to authenticity. Like a lot of these people are, I have to think that all the addictions, both sexual and chemical and substance in Utah, along with all the depression and all the SSRIs and just the high incidence of all that, I have to think it's from people living out of, at least in part, from people living out of sync with their true self. Mm-hmm. Is that, I mean, I'm guessing, I'm speculating, but you talk about Lisa and you talk about what you would have felt, what it would have been like for you to follow that trajectory that wasn't authentic. Mm-hmm. You probably would have been self-medicating in unhealthy ways as an Orthodox devout Mormon.
Yes.
Relief Society president by day, doing whatever by night. I mean, I don't know, or overeating, right? Like whatever it is, I think that's kind of a core message is live your authenticity so that you can feel good inside so you don't have to self-medicate your life away. And then, yes, but find a moral compass. You may have to make some mistakes along the way. I feel more moral now than I did as an Orthodox Mormon, which is really weird. Well, do you feel that way too?
I mean, I think I'm like morally, I'm the same as far as, you know, my level of honesty or whatever. I was very honest when I was in the church but I feel so much more empowered. I've had that question before, you know, well, when it comes to living morally, you know, I feel so much more empowered that I'm doing that now just because I want to, not because I'm trying to prove my worth or for fear of a consequence of what might happen if I'm not living morally. I'm just living morally because it feels good. It's the right thing to do. It's good to other people and because I want to. And that's so empowering. I don't need anybody to tell me to be a good person. I can just choose to be that. Because, like I said, it brings me peace and joy.
So I really want to talk about what it's like to be a millennial 20-something in Utah, divorced, maybe back on the dating scene. Do you want to talk about that before or after your second marriage or both?
We can talk about it. Yeah, I guess it relates. Because
there's going to be people that do get divorced or that don't get early married, and they have to navigate those waters.
Yeah.
So let's just say there's a 21-year-old woman in Utah who's lost her testimony. She's not going to be able to go the Orthodox route, and she has to kind of swim in the waters of single womanhood in their 20s as a post-Mormon millennial. What stories do you want to tell? What experiences? What advice? Like, let's spend some time there because I think that's a thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are and this was the biggest. Okay, so this is true for both of my divorces. When I was first divorced, I thought nobody's going to want to date me. Like, how embarrassing. This is such a mark of shame. I was so worried about people having interest in dating me and being judgmental about me being divorced. And I was surprised that it was never a hesitation. I had no issues. So if I were to give advice to a girl that was in a situation similar as mine, I would say, don't worry about that. People really don't judge you for being divorced. And what also surprised me was how many people I met that were divorced that were my age. There are a lot of young adults that are divorced. And even one step further, there are a lot of young adults twice divorced in Salt Lake. I'm very surprised by that as well.
So divorce is alive and well in Mormonism.
Well, in Salt Lake,
Yeah.
but yeah, in Mormonism.
Okay.
So dating was interesting. I always say I never really dated in the real world before I married Joe. I dated in the BYU bubble. So then I started dating in this adult, post-Mormon real world. And some of it was scary. Some of it was fun. Dating, it was good for me. It was a positive thing for me to jump back into dating because I needed to meet new people. I made a lot of new friends that had more similar, interests, and dating was good after my divorce. It was fun.
I imagine, I can't imagine how I would even now handle sexuality. Like, there's no sex ed as a Mormon kid growing up. Everything's off limits. It's all bad. And then to have to navigate the world of contraception,
Yes.
STIs, multiple partners. I don't even know. How do you even ramp up? You know what I mean? How do you learn?
Well, and that's something that I wish someone would have said to me at that time was educate yourself, understand. I mean, all of those things that we're missing from sex ed, you need to find out for yourself. And then you're free to define your own code now. So there's power in that. I love that. But get clear. Allow yourself to become clear on what works for you as far as your sexual moral code, and stay true to that, however that looks. But definitely educate yourself on contraception.
How did you learn?
STIs.
How did you learn some of that stuff? How does one even go about learning? Books, internet, friends.
Yeah, sure. Books, internet, friends. I'm from experience.
Oh yeah, that's probably the main way, right?
Yeah, but no, talk to people. Yeah, because if I would have just talked to some of my girlfriends who maybe hadn't been raised Mormon and had a little bit more understanding and education and experience, that would have been very helpful for me.
So was it fun? Was it painful? Was it hard?
I was pretty, and to be honest, I was pretty like when it came to, well, be clear. What are you asking?
I just think of sex and word of wisdom stuff. I mean, that's, but there's probably more. There's probably emotional stuff. I don't even know what I don't know. You know what I mean?
No, I was I just did I did what I had been doing, and the whole motivation for what I was doing. I did what felt right. And if something felt right and I felt honest about it, then I was fine and safe in it. And there wasn't any, what I'm trying to say, no major issues, no big drama. It was a good, fun time.
Okay. So, in a Mormon paradigm, next to murder, word of wisdom stuff and premarital sex is evil, bad, right? Now, having experienced some of that stuff, is it evil? Do you regret it? Is it awesome? How do you make sense of that lifestyle that's really demonized by the church?
I think honestly, moderation is key. Alcohol is not evil. It can be, I've had some incredible, talk about connection and conversation over wine with a close friend. And it's brought us closer, and we've had a really great experience enjoying wine and having a great conversation together. And I've had a lot of fun at my birthday party, drinking with my friends. But in moderation, I think if people can learn your limits quickly, and don't take things too far, no, it's not evil. And
ironically, that's what the word of wisdom says. It says in moderation.
Right.
Wine's okay, beer's okay, according to the word of wisdom.
That's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
Because I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with
that.
that.
Joseph Smith got that one right.
Yeah. And then as far as sexual intimacy in a relationship, I think it's key. I can't believe I ever, looking at marrying somebody and never having intimacy with them before being married, can't even imagine. I think it's wrong. I don't think you should do that. I think that's a beautiful part of a relationship. And if you're in a safe, healthy relationship with somebody that you love and respect and who loves and respects you, to let the shame go and allow yourself to have that be a part of a healthy, normal relationship, even if you're not married.
Yeah. And personally, as I've counseled with individuals who marry their spouse that are having sex and then find out their spouse is gay or their spouse has no libido, and then they're locked into a life a sexless life or a life voiding physical intimacy. Like, that's super important, right?
Yeah.
And that can be awful. And so I've gone, even though again, I'm super monogamous, I've gone from feeling like premarital sex is awful to like almost having a testimony of premarital sex just from that standpoint, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about it? Is that how you feel?
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. And not even
it's like essential. It's not just not evil.
No, it's essential.
Like essential.
Yes. And not even just for that, not even just so that you can know how you connect with that person before you commit to marriage with them, but also because that's a beautiful part of a relationship. And that allows you to connect and feel closer to the person that you love. And so yeah, absolutely. I'll be telling my daughters to have sex before they get married.
Is that kind of weird to say, though?
That is way weird
like
to
my
say.
Mormon brain
I don't think
is
I've ever
like...
said it like that, so it is weird to say that.
Yeah.
But it's healthy.
Okay. All right. So no big, huge dating war stories that are important.
I mean...
Just follow your inner voice and use moderation and
listen,
in good sense and learn
and
educate yourself.
Talk to other people outside of the church before you just dive right in.
Okay. So second marriage, do you want to talk about that or not? Or
you know what? This is the way when people ask me about being divorced twice, I say the first marriage was a result of some societal and cultural norm and pressure. It's just kind of what we did. The second marriage, I would say, was definitely one that I married. Like the first one, I got married for the wrong reasons. I got married because society told me it's what I was supposed to do, and my parents, and he was the perfect boy, and whatever. The second marriage was real.
Yeah, you have no one to blame for that one,
I have
right?
no one to blame. That was love. That was real. That was a huge challenge. That marriage and divorce was heartbreaking, and so yeah, I mean. When I think about, I've been married and divorced twice, I'm like, I almost don't think about that sounds bad, but I almost don't think about my marriage with Joe. And I say that because I'm trying to articulate that I feel that my marriage and divorce from my second husband was kind of a real life experience of marriage and divorce.
Okay.
And that was heartbreaking.
Like, how do you make sense of it? What can you share about what happened? I'm not digging for anything you don't want to share, but like... Just
to...
like you would have lived together maybe before you got married, right? So you would have known...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we lived together before we got married. We didn't communicate well, and we were on different pages on some major things that weren't communicated honestly before we got married. So that one,
was he religious? Was he a believer?
He had grown up in the church and had practiced for most of his life, but when we were together, he wasn't religious at all. So I think kind of like Jack Mormon, like kind of put on the facade that he was still maybe part of the church, but wasn't actually practicing at all.
Okay. But religion wasn't a factor between you at all?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let's just say either of you or both of you or one of you learned things after you were married that you didn't know before?
Yes.
So there wasn't maybe full honesty?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
On some major things.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Like, we tend to think of divorce as like one of the worst things ever.
Yeah, well, it was in complete contrast from my first divorce. My first divorce, I stand by. That's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I felt peace through that whole process. It was loving. It was amicable. It was joyful in certain ways. And then my second divorce was what I think most people are familiar with in terms of divorce, and that was ugly and heartbreaking and disappointing and discouraging and unexpected and not by choice. I don't feel that I would have never chosen to. I mean, I ended up leaving the marriage, to be clear, just to clarify, but I would have never wanted that. I didn't want it to end the way that it did. I didn't want to face the challenges that we faced in our marriage, and I know he didn't either. Neither of us did. So that one was a lot more heartbreaking and sad.
Had he been married before?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Second, third, most people don't understand that first marriages, we always think there's a 50% divorce rate. First marriages, as I understand the statistics, succeed about 70% of the time and only have about a 30% divorce rate. First marriages. It's the second, third, fourth, and fifth marriages that bring the average down for marriage overall. So I understand that you almost double your chance of divorce after.
I'm screwed now.
No. But my mom was married 33 years to her third husband, right?
Oh.
So, I mean, you can find the love of your life, but you just have to understand if you're in a salvageable first marriage, do everything you can to keep it, because you will face more difficult odds with subsequent marriages. That doesn't mean it can't be done, but the odds are against you. So I always say, do everything you can to strengthen and save your first marriage, because, but again, so it was a really hard, how long were you guys married?
All together, like married, dating, married, 2 years. We were married less than a year.
Okay. Okay. So that super hard divorce. What else, anything else you want to say about that, or?
Not really.
Okay.